Donna Brazile was in town this week for the Miami Book Fair, and I had a chance to interview her about her new book, Hacked, and the claims she made about the 2016 presidential primary. And that's where we began our conversation. All right, let's talk about the book that you wrote. Am I supposed to conclude from the book that the primary election was rigged on behalf of Hillary Clinton?
No, I would hope that you conclude by the end of reading all 20 chapters that in 2016 the country was under attack. I became chair of the Democratic Party because we were hacked. We were hacked by a foreign country that wanted to sow discord within our electorate, discredit our nominee, who was Hillary Clinton, and to cause a lot of chaos and confusion. After searching through all of the various departments at the DNC, I learned that the Clinton campaign had a separate agreement, separate from the joint fundraising agreement, that gave them control over 3 divisions within the Democratic Party. It prohibited me from doing my job, and it gave them control before they won the nomination. So
did that give Hillary Clinton an unfair advantage over Bernie Sanders? Would Bernie Sanders have been the nominee if it had not been for that secret agreement?
No, I don't think so. I think Hillary won by 4 million more votes. There was no evidence that any of the primaries, the Florida primary, for example, or the Alabama or the Louisiana primary, there was no evidence whatsoever. What concerned me is that, and it should concern Democrats, and of course that's why the new chairman has made the changes, is that the party should never allow one candidate to take over any divisions. Now, the reason for taking over is because the DNC was in a lot of debt, and in exchange for giving the DNC $1.5 million a month for several months, they put us on a starvation diet. So as chair, I could not control the resources that I basically had to utilize to help win the election.
This book paints a very dim portrait of Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who I know you know is from down here.
Very much so.
Is she to blame? Give me the case that you want to make against Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Do you think she was a bad DNC chair?
Debbie was my colleague. She was my friend. I turned the gavel over to Debbie in 2011. Remember, I was chair twice. I'm the person that the DNC doesn't call on at the beginning, but I'm always there to go in and help clean things up. As a result of the debt that we got in 2014, Debbie did not alert the other officers. And when I became chair, I found that debt and I had to clean it up. And so, as I said in the book, Debbie, who took on a job that, you know, many thought she would not handle very well, I came in to make sure that that debt was eliminated.
Talking to supporters of Debbie Wasserman Schultz, they say, you know, she helped steer for the victory for President Obama's re-election in 2012. The president asked her to stay on. If she was doing such a bad job, why did the president ask her to stay on?
Well, you know, President Obama's book will be out in a couple of years, and he'll be able to answer that question. I can only tell you that as my colleague on the DNC, I worked very well with Debbie. I said in the book that I did not want to be chair, but as you well know, on the Sunday before the convention started, after the leaked emails, I became the chair of the party.
Donald Trump is using this book to paint the Democratic Party in a very nasty light, to sort of say that, to show divisions within the Democratic Party. Is your book giving aid and comfort basically to the enemy, the Republican Party?
Well, first of all, I said over and over again that President Trump should clean up his own house before he go looking for dirt in someone else's house. I think the Democratic Party was under attack, and one thing that has disappointed me very strongly in the president is that he has not condemned the hacking that took place. He has not put forward any safeguards to ensure that our electoral integrity is protected in 2018 and beyond. So as far as I'm concerned, the president should really focus on preventing the kind of cyber attacks we saw in 2016.
Where does the Democratic Party go from here? Do you believe those divisions remain? And what does the party need to do? It had a very good run recently in Virginia, New York, New Jersey, but you almost get the sense that Democrats are maybe acting a little too cocky?
Oh, no. Look, this is a party that is coming out of the wilderness. We saw a blue wave last election, last week, because we have grassroots Democrats all over the country who are now running for office. In the state of Virginia, for example, 4 years ago, we only had half a team on the field. This year, we had a full team on the field. So what we're seeing now is Democrats from all backgrounds competing in red states and blue states alike. The Democratic Party is coming together. You know, we're like any family. Sometimes we have arguments. Sometimes we don't like the way we make make gumbo, but in the end, we're going to make a delicious sauce, and the American people will find out that our recipe is one that can bring us a victory in 2018 and beyond. Joe
Biden hasn't closed the door on running in 2020. What do you think of Joe Biden running possible?
Well, first of all, I have enormous respect for the vice president. I've known him for over 30 years, but this is too soon to begin to coronate a candidate for 2020. We need to get past 2018, where we have 33 gubernatorial races, 33 senatorial races, 435 congressional races, perhaps the day after November 6, 2018. That's 355 days from now. We can select the presidential nominee.
The Democratic Party often gets criticized for not having new, young, fresh faces.
I agree.
You agree with that?
Yeah, have you seen his hair? Yeah, we need fresh blood and some new faces. I agree.
So is the old guard keeping the young guard from coming up?
You know what I tell people? I say the old guard do not need to leave the room. We need everybody. They need to scoot over and make room for some of the new guard. I'm looking forward to some of the new people that I'm helping out there in this across the country. Just the other day in Virginia, Justin Fairfax, who was one of my young, college interns in the 2000 campaign, he's now the lieutenant governor. We're making room for others. We just need to scoot over and allow these new voices to come within the party.
Do you worry that, for instance, having the Democratic Party's face be Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer gives that feel that it's an old, stale party?
Well, baby boomers like myself, like Nancy Pelosi and others, they have every right to run for office. They have every right to continue to lead this party. But we have a new crop of Democrats, a crop that I think will give us an opportunity to serve in more state houses and more city council chambers across the country. So we need to make room for others. We shouldn't ask people to abandon their public service. We should ask them to bring in more people.
As someone, obviously, one of the main topics being discussed right now is sexual harassment. We're seeing it in Alabama. I want you to comment on that. But before that, I feel almost as if I need to ask, in the years that you came coming up in the Democratic Party, what sort of sexism, sexual harassment, or if any, did you encounter along the way?
I've encountered racism, sexism, ageism, and everything in between. And my mother once told me it's not what they call you, it's what you answer to. Because coming up as a young girl who grew up in the segregated South, I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to be a person who could try to bring more people into the political process. We should have a zero tolerance policy towards sexual harassment and sexual assault. I'm glad that Congress is going to begin training and to begin to educate people. We need that across the country. No American, no woman, no human being should be treated with disrespect. No means no. And I would hope that the good people of Alabama will reject Roy Moore and support Doug Jones. I'm a Democrat. I know Doug Jones, but I want them to reject Roy Moore because it would send a bad signal to the country if Roy Moore was elected.
In a cynical way, do you almost wish the Republicans would elect Roy Moore to tie him around their neck?
I'm an American first. I get partisan politics. I love it. But, I also think about the future of our country. And a little girl right now watching what's going on in Alabama should know that no man should proposition her, touch her in an inappropriate way. So, no, I don't think we should, try to use this for political gain. We should try to clean up our country so that every American know that they can have a head start and a healthy start and not be harassed because of their gender.
What does the Democratic Party stand for right now? Other than being against Donald Trump, I don't know that the party has articulated a clear vision as to what it's for.
Well, we got to go beyond just having a bumper sticker or what I call a soundbite. We're the party of hope and opportunity for all Americans. We're the party that will continue to strengthen the middle class and those who wish to become part of the middle class. Our policies are policies that I think enable every American, as I said before, to have a head start and healthy start. We're going to have a stronger message, a stronger team of leaders who will help guide us in the future.
But do you worry that the party is just relying so much on the idea that they're the anti-Trump party, that that's enough to carry them?
Well, it was enough for 65 million Americans last year when they voted, for Hillary Clinton over Donald Trump. I think that's one part of the recipe, but for any great recipe, you got to have both what I call the seasoning as well as the salt. And the Democrats will provide the seasoning with a strong message, but the salt comes from the voters who want to change. And Donald Trump is not bringing about any bring change. He's not pivoted. I mean, 1 year in office, he has not pivoted toward trying to build a bigger base for his party or the country. So I think Democrats will have an opportunity in 2018 to reach out to the American people who feel that Donald Trump has not kept his promise to focus on jobs, to focus on economic development, to focus on coal country, to focus on making sure that America, in his words, is great again.
Donna Brazile, thank you very much for your time.
Always a pleasure, sir.
We'll be right back after the break.